I didn't really want to um, do a live right now. It feels weird because people have a horrible tendency of using tragedy to increase their attention and their following. But as someone who knew Charlie Kirk, I would say as a friend, I just couldn't get it out of my head that I think the last thing that Charlie would want people who fight for life, for liberty, for righteousness in the public square would have been to slow down or stop. I don't know if I ever met a harder worker in my generation. And so it feels strange to be doing a YouTube live, but I wanted everyone who researches Charlie for decades to come to be able to hear the truth from someone who knew him and the real man that he actually was. There's probably few people hated more by our culture, by the left, by every manifestation of darkness. Besides Trump, and well, there you go. They literally shot both of them in the head. I have not seen someone that the demonic left hates more than my friend Charlie Kirk. I mean, I can only share the man that I guess I knew. And as we're talking to you right now, the most vilest, darkest, evil comments and arguments and debates are happening on Twitter, on TikTok. They're within minutes of some demonic, deranged person shooting Charlie Kirk in the neck. You had entire thousands of posts and reels and comments thread of people celebrating and jeering and laughing. If that doesn't tell you exactly what we're up against in this country, I don't know what will. The first quote that I thought of after getting the confirmation that Charlie Kirk had been actually assassinated and martyred this afternoon was from Teddy Roosevelt. And the reason I thought about it was because I've never seen someone have their motives questioned more and their movement attacked more and their personality discredited more and their actions examined more. I've never seen more brutal and disgusting caricatures and cartoons and comments about someone more than Charlie from those that seek to destroy the church, kill the babies, trans the kids, destroy American exceptionalism, dismantle the family as we know it in America today. Even from friends of mine over the years who didn't like Charlie, and they weren't leftist, but they thought Charlie was crazy and a MAGA cult member. And I would have friends text me saying, "Is Charlie really legit? I don't really like him. I don't like how he talks to people." Even people allegedly on his side, I would get texts from people saying like, "Why are you partnering with him? He's just a MAGA cult member." My point is I've rarely seen someone who fought harder for, I mean, really for you actually. That's kind of why this is so hard. I mean, it's the famous kind of line that Trump said years ago was that they're not coming for me, they're coming for you, and I'm in the way. And pretty much everything Charlie did was for the next generation, for making sure that there would be an America, there would be a country for your children and your grandchildren to inherit and to safeguard and to protect and to steward and to actually flourish in. But, politics makes people do stupid things, and even people allegedly who held the same political views as Charlie would still question and discredit and attack him. And the thing I noticed over the years that I knew Charlie was that those comments always came from people who would never lift a finger to fight for the things that they said they cared about and which Charlie lived to fight for. And so I thought of this, I don't know why, but I think the Lord just brought it to mind. It's a quote from Teddy Roosevelt. It's quite famous. But it's the first thing I thought of after it was confirmed that Charlie passed away in the hospital this afternoon. It's called "The Man in the Arena." And it's a passage or a section, a quote that has meant a lot to me over the years. Fighting similar evils on a way smaller platform and a way smaller scale. And I just feel like it captures so much of who Charlie was and what he did. And it says, Teddy Roosevelt said, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. It is not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. I don't know anyone else in my life who was in the arena more often. I met Charlie in 2020 because 2020 connected a lot of people. united a lot of fighters. And I was an absolute nobody with no organization of my own, no platform, some stupid little podcast. And Rob McCoy, who became our pastor, was the first pastor to invite Charlie to speak in a church ever. I mean, because, pastors don't want to get political. Charlie's too political. And that was the first church, if I recall, that Charlie ever spoken on a Sunday morning. This was before Turning Point Faith. And I think Pastor Rob or someone sent Charlie a video of me speaking, and then Charlie just started texting me and encouraging me, and I'll never forget it. It was this strange moment where I'm like, how would someone with so much influence and power and platform who's so busy spend time on someone like me? And I really think, in memory of Charlie, as someone who knew him and counted him a friend, but certainly was not in his inner circle, certainly was not traveling with him. But for those of you who watch this in years to come, one of the most incredible and surprising things about Charlie, for someone of his influence and popularity, was the time that he took to support the little guy, the time that he took to pour into people and to support people, the time he would take to meet with you if you came to hear him speak. And it's so rare, actually, for celebrities. As someone is often on the road with, or at a conference with, popular people, it's such a rare thing. The popular, sought after people don't have time for you. They're too busy. I think celebrities develop a complex of self-importance and pride, and their fans and the people who want a picture with them, the people who want to share something with them, they don't have time for them, and it's a nuisance. And that was never true of Charlie, and it was incredible. And as his influence grew and his popularity and his reach, he would never stop to send me a text or to encourage me or to ask me a question on abortion, and ask me how to talk through something. And this is not about me. I want people who have maligned him and attacked him, and people who think that the left is bad, but Charlie's too much. He's too radical. He's too MAGA. People who never knew him, to know that I have never met a more popular celebrity who took so much time for people and actually cared about small organizations and brand new ventures and people with no followers, because he recognized the power and the significance and the beauty of the individual. Everything's changed now, I think. Commentators and authors will talk and write about this for years. And I don't think I'm in a right state of mind to provide cultural commentary on what this means. But this is This is otherworldly. There was no one who swayed young men to the conservative movement, the conservative position, and let's call it the common sense realist tradition in the last 50 years. There's no one who has gotten in touch with the hearts and the minds, particularly of millennial and Gen Z young men, more than Charlie in, I don't know, 60, 70 years. I remember a moment with Charlie years ago in 2021. And I was thinking about starting my own organization. And he was speaking at a pregnancy center gala in Los Angeles, north of LA. So I texted him and said, I saw you're going to be coming out. And he said, awesome, come hang out. Let's hang out in the green room. Let's talk beforehand. And he said, you absolutely need to start your own organization. He said, you need to be the face. You need to be the leader of this movement. You need to be thinking innovatively. And he had all these ideas, just constant ideas pouring out of him. And then he'd sit at the table with him and my wife, Olivia, and I, and our second born, our daughter, who was a baby at that point. And every single time that I heard Charlie speak in person, if I was actually in the audience, so at a church, to come and hear him, at a conference, at a gala, if he was local, I'd tell him I'd come out and hear him. Every single time I went to hear Charlie speak in person, he found some strange way to weave me into his talk and to say, by the way, Seth Gruber right here, and give some glowing endorsement of me. His talk had nothing to do about half the time about pro-life. But all these fights were the same for him. And he'd find a way to honor me and make sure the whole audience knew that they should connect with me. And I didn't even have an organization. That's the kind of man that Charlie was. Incredibly giving, incredibly smart, incredibly kind. And for someone of his youth and his influence and his platform, incredibly other-centered. Most people don't know this, but Charlie, through Turning Point, actually gave some of the seed money in the first few months for me to get the White Rose Resistance Organization launched and off the ground, and cover startup costs and turn it into what it is today. But perhaps of all the things that you could say about Charlie, it was that he was a man of great, great, great courage, which is probably the virtue lacking the most in the American church and in the culture at large. We are a society of cowards. Reminds me of something C.S. Lewis said. He said, courage is not simply one of the virtues, but the form of every virtue at the testing point, which means at the point of highest reality. In other words, none of the other virtues matter if you're not a courageous man. I know many courageous men. But Charlie Kirk is by far the most courageous man I've ever known. At 31 years old. My wife and I got to go to their wedding celebration. Not the wedding, but the wedding celebration and part of Turning Point's 9th anniversary celebration. And absolutely shocking. Walk up there, big line of people to take a quick picture with Charlie and Erica. And I could watch Charlie go whisper into the ear of his wife and tell her the name of every single person that was about to step forward. Insane. Hundreds of people. He knew everyone's name there. People have been threatening to kill and murder Charlie for a long time, actually. I mean, the amount of death threats they've gotten over the years has been insane. I just don't think any of us ever thought it would happen. Then months later, this is just the Charlie I knew. And I just thought it would be important for people to know that. As people write biographies for the next 20 years on this man. As teenagers trying to learn about Charlie years from now. Whoever sees this, I thought I would tell you the Charlie that I knew. He invited me to a huge event at Dream City Church in Phoenix for one of the Freedom Nights that he does. 1,500 people or something crazy, and told people to support this tiny little organization just getting started. And let me do a whole pitch. Probably one of the kindest things that I've ever had said about me over the years. People come up at events, or probably one of the kindest things that I've ever had said about me by various people was that you're the Charlie Kirk of the pro-life movement. It's kind of a silly phrase, but it's always meant a lot. Because Charlie was the bravest, hardest working, most courageous, and smartest man for his age that I've ever met. Leaving his wife, Erica, and their 2 daughters behind. My friend, William Wolf, just tweeted a powerful quote from Soren Kierkegaard. Says, "The tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule begins. Many conservative thinkers and influencers love to say that they're Christians, and they love to kind of throw the Christian label on their social media accounts and use the name of Christ and Christianity to bolster their platform when they're speaking. But there are very few conservative influencers, for lack of a better term, who actually openly share the gospel when they're in front of thousands, either digitally or literally. And I would watch Charlie time and time and time and again on a stage, at a church, on a college campus, openly share Christ with people, walk through the gospel step by step with young men and young women. It's pretty rare, unfortunately. When the wisdom of the age and the wisdom of our political betters tell us that we're in a post-Christian age and people don't believe in Jesus anymore, so just give them arguments. Just give them reasons to believe things. Just beat them on the battlefield of ideas, which Charlie did better than anyone else. But Charlie never bought that wisdom of the age. He knew that the most important thing was Jesus. Just days ago, I think he tweeted, "Jesus is all that matters." And then my wife and I got to watch with great honor the establishing of Turning Point Faith, co-founded by Charlie and Rob McCoy as we were attending that church. Watch Charlie mobilize pastors across theological lines to try to unify the church on core fundamentals of the family, religious liberty, the babies, marriage. Charlie knew that this was a season and a moment of time to turn things around in this country or to lose this country forever. And it's an indictment and a judgment on the American church that Charlie had more courage in his little finger than most pulpits in America. All of the pastor summits and believer summits and Turning Point Faith conferences, Charlie would platform people who were not a big deal, who didn't have huge followings, but who had important, burning passions and ministries and callings and messages for the church. That's, in my experience, one of the most important things that I wanted everyone to know about Charlie. Hilaire Belloc said, a good man is known by the enemies he makes. A good man is known by the enemies he makes. I think it's safe to say that Charlie was probably one of the most hated people, period, by our dark, depraved, selfish, and sex-obsessed culture. And yet he would always stop to have conversations with people. I think it's a warning and a wake-up call for a lot of people watching today on September 10th, 2025. Thousands of people celebrating on social media, cheering, giddy. Comments of people celebrating that their wishes came true. When Charlie's entire organization and mission was built on the premise we should not stop talking. Charlie said this hundreds of times, that when we stop talking, that's when violence begins. If we can keep having conversations as a society, as people who disagree, if we have to look each other in the face and have a conversation with someone we disagree with, that will prevent absolute violent interactions if we can have civil verbal interactions. He spent his entire calling and career having conversations with people who hated him. And they still killed him for it. They still murdered him for it. They still martyred him for it. I don't want to get into too much commentating. But it's not a coincidence that the Lord used Charlie to reach probably more young men with common sense thinking about the nature of reality and the nature of our republic and the reality of what's happening in our country than almost perhaps anyone else. And so they murdered him. If you get the hearts of men, everything changes. First in your family, but yes, also in entire societies and civilizations. Engage the heart of man, and you'll change the world. And I think Charlie knew how to engage and enrage the hearts of young men struggling with pornography, purposelessness, despair, loneliness, confusion, anger, and leave them with hope. Maybe even give them vision for the future. That's powerful. Very few people have the giftings to be able to do that. To be able to sit down, no notes, and talk to hundreds of young men, one after another. It's an incredibly rare gift. I always felt stupid hanging out with Charlie. The intellect and the brilliance that the Lord gave him. Charlie tweeted not that long ago, "Get married, have kids, and stop partying into oblivion. Leave a legacy. Be courageous. Happy Sunday. God bless all the parents out there." Reminds me of what Sophie Scholl of the original White Rose Resistance said, "Such a fine sunny day. And I have to go now. But what does my death matter? If through us, thousands of people are awakened and stirred to action. And that's what Charlie spent his life doing, awakening and stirring people to action. And I think his legacy may be greater after his departure than before. We're getting reports that Lauren Boebert, Congresswoman in Colorado, a friend of mine, just asked for a moment of prayer for Charlie Kirk on the House floor. And the Democrats all started yelling, no. Do you understand it now? Do you get it? Do you get the vitriolic, demonic darkness that we're actually dealing with here? By the way, for the tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Christians in America whose hands were too pure to get dirty in the dirty business of politics, who castigated and attacked people like Charlie because he's just a right-wing MAGA cult influencer, He was fighting against the same evils that would destroy you and your family if they could. Like, do you understand the level of demonic warfare and darkness you're dealing with when one entire political party won't even pause to pray for someone they disagree with? That's too far for them. A moment of silence and prayer for an American citizen who was just murdered on a college campus? Can't do that because we don't like him. What? Why? Because of his beliefs and what he advocated for. Which, wake up call, guys, ain't all that different than what every Christian in America believes. It's only because of fighters like Charlie that tide of darkness has not showed up at the front door of your home for the last 50 years. It's because of people like Charlie and Rush Limbaugh and the fighters who went before you that kept that tide of darkness from obliterating the American family and the church as we know it. And no one with as big of a platform as Charlie was such a defender of the local church. Absolutely disgusting. Matt Walsh left a really beautiful tweet just a few minutes ago. He said, Charlie was the most courageous and effective culture warrior in the country. Now we have to fight harder than ever, be bolder, and be braver than ever. Let this be the turning point. One of my friends said that the death of Charlie shows the power of words. The more he spoke, the more people gathered. He even brought his haters and trolls to the front, not to silence them as his enemies did, but to love and debate them. He did this because he knew his words were true and that people would see the truth for themselves. His words awakened people. No one could win a debate against him, not because he was clever, but because truth cannot be beaten. Yet the more they lost with words, the more they hated him. And in the end, though he only ever fought with words, his enemies could not endure the truth. On September 10th, 2025, they murdered him. But they will never stop his words. That's an amen. And an amen, if there ever was one. I have a memory of one of Charlie's favorite quotes. I used to hear him say it a lot in 2021 and 2022. It's from Aristotle, who said, tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. Tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society. It's sort of a beautiful summary of so much of what Charlie did and what he said and what he warned against. Because we in the West and in America, we just go along to get along. We seemingly don't care about anything else that happens out there as long as it doesn't directly inconvenience or impact my way of life and what I do from 9 to 5. And from 6 until I go to bed. By and large, the American person does not care about what is going on if it doesn't directly inconvenience them. That's not a good kind of tolerance. That is a deadly kind of tolerance. I'm remembering one moment when I was picking up sushi at our local sushi restaurant. And I left my phone in the car. And my wife came running into the restaurant saying, Charlie's on the phone. My wife picked it up. He just called to ask me some question on abortion. He said, I'm about to go speak right now. Just had a quick question for you. Sometimes the Lord makes people who are so larger than life that the normal person doesn't really know what to do with someone like that. Some people have such an extra measure of gifting and clarity and power and presence that they're naturally attacked. They're naturally discredited. And Charlie knew that he was a talented person. And instead of being prideful and boastful about it, he stewarded his gifts well. And time and time and time again, I would watch him bring it back to Jesus, call people to trust in Christ live at events, reminding them that that's all that matters in the end. Someone once told me a story, remain nameless, that Charlie actually changed the mind of Ivanka and what's her husband's name? Jared, on abortion. And that had a direct impact on President Trump himself. This is one of thousands of stories that you'll hear from other people who knew Charlie better than me over the next few weeks. But it's quite possible that even the good that the Trump administration has done on the unborn in the past was due to Charlie. Who constantly tried to use his influence, his power, to establish righteousness and to push forward what the Lord cared about. So, in Memoriam, today on September 10th, 2025, if you're listening to this, watching this, or you watch this in the coming weeks, pray for Charlie's wife, Erica, and their 2 daughters. It's quite possible that your life would look very different right now if it wasn't for Charlie Kirk. It's very, 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 very likely that without Charlie Kirk, Kamala Harris would be president of the United States right now. And your life as a Christian would look very, 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 very different. If you're a nurse, if you don't want to be coerced into performing abortions, if you don't want to be coerced into selling the abortion pill, if you don't want to be coerced into taking the jab, if you don't want your kids being mandated with pornographic sexuality education in the public schools, if you don't want your kid who's struggling with gender theory to be able to be kidnapped and taken across state lines to be trans without your consent, your life might look a lot different right now. In September of 2025, if it hadn't been for Charlie Kirk, who Trump probably owes the election to because of the hundreds of thousands of young men, college-aged, coming to see Charlie and voting for Trump because of it in the lead up to the election. I don't think any of us will have any idea how different our life might be right now if it hadn't been for the life of Charlie Kirk. Because that's how culture wars go. It's the people taking their arrows up at the front who are easy to judge and criticize and pick apart, but whose actions have a direct impact on the trickle-down effect of ideas and policies in the land of the free and the home of the brave that you'll never know how it would have been different if it hadn't been for them. That's always the nature of the fighters up front. They never get the thank you. They never get the gratitude from the common man. But the layperson's life is always better and always different, immeasurably, because of the 1 or 2% who are taking all the arrows and holding back the tide of darkness. This is a spiritual battle. Charlie understood that. It always has been. And that darkness seeks to devour, demolish, dismember, and destroy. Even if you're a moderate liberal Democrat, you owe certain liberties and aspects of your life that you've taken for granted to the fight and the work of Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. What an honor to have known Charlie. To have seen him speak over and over again in the first church that ever let him talk at Godspeak Calvary Chapel with my former pastor, Rob McCoy, who loved Charlie. who married them, and who opened up evangelical pulpits all around the country to this kid who had more clarity and courage than almost every pastor in America. There was an article written about Charlie a year or two ago. I remember all of us talking about it in a text thread. It might have been The Atlantic. I don't remember, but it was called The Right's New Kingmaker. The Right's New Kingmaker. And the whole argument of the article was Charlie now has more power than the GOP and CPAC. So people go to kiss the ring of Charlie in order to get the funding, finance, support, and attention they need to get elected. Charlie might have been a kingmaker of the next generation of politicians and fighters, but he knew who the King of Kings was, who had made him his own little prince on this earth to wield influence and to steward power that was given to him by God to establish righteousness, to awaken the moral and spiritual conscience of America, and to give a warning to the West and a warning to the American church that you don't have much time left if you want to safeguard the freedoms and liberties of your children and grandchildren. To make sure that America stays what Reagan called the last best hope of man on earth. This is what Charlie and I's pastor, Rob McCoy, just put up on Instagram. Pastor Rob, co-founder of Turning Point Faith with Charlie, said, "My friend Charlie Kirk was murdered today by a coward. His life will be remembered for many wonderful things. He built it all with the power of the spoken word. He never used violence, but was threatened every day with violence by those who couldn't contend with logic and truth. And now they have done to my friend what evil always does. It takes away life. Charlie did not die, however, but instead he has begun to truly live. His life was secured eternally by his Savior, Jesus Christ. This truth allowed Charlie to face every threat with courage because he didn't fear death. All evil knows is death, and they derive power from death. Charlie lived for life and will be remembered for this. My heart is broken for his family, his wife Erica, and his two precious children. Evil has not prevailed and will not win." Rob McCoy. He called me his pastor, but I prefer to be known as his friend and his biggest fan. It's probably hard to fully encapsulate or rhetorically articulate what Charlie means to so many Americans and the impact and legacy that he's had. A legacy and an impact that we probably won't understand, won't see, or won't comprehend until glory. So pray for Charlie's family. And pray for the coward who murdered him to be brought to justice swiftly. I love you, brother. I'm grateful for you. Thank you for taking time for the little guy. For supporting the underdog. And for caring about all the different extensions of justice that exist in the kingdom of God, and for giving a voice to them, for supporting them, for funding them. You'll hear far more beautiful, far more personal, and far more intimate memoriams of Charlie Kirk. But for the sake of his legacy, for the sake of his family, for the sake of Turning Point, and for the sake of all that he did for the Lord and the church, I wanted you to know that this was the man I knew.